6:30 p.m. This is the regular monthly board meeting being held on June 7th, 2022. We have a quorum with all members present. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag led by Terry High School seniors Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Armani Welch and Cadet Major Jocelyn Galindo. Thank you. You may be seated. Dr. Nivens, are there any recognitions or awards?
Yes, President Hunt, there are some recognitions and awards. I'll turn it over to Ms. Sonia Cole Hamilton.
Good evening, President Hunt, Board of Trustees, Dr. Nivens, and our wonderful community. Tonight, we have the pleasure of recognizing an outstanding athlete, George Ranch High School senior Shane Gardner. Shane, would you please come forward? Shane Gardner finished third at the UIL State Track Meet in the 110-meter hurdles with a time of 13.73 seconds to claim the bronze medal at the 6A level. You guys, first through third place in this event were separated by a mere 0.03 seconds at the finish line, and Shane is a member of the class of 2022 and is a school record holder in the 110-meter hurdles. This was Shane's second trip to the state meet during his high school career, and he is now preparing for a college track career at the University of Pennsylvania. Shane is coached by Longhorn track coach Nick Olivieri, and he is joined by his mother this evening, Nidra, and stepfather Tracy Whitehead. We'd like to present to you Shane and his family. Picture. As they're taking their photo, I want to let our audience know that tonight and moving forward, we're making photos taken during the recognition portion of our board meetings available to the public via our district website. Users may visit the Board of Trustees tab, go to the menu on the right, and click Recognition Photos, and from there, you can just select the board meeting and you should be able to view a gallery of the photos taken during the recognition portion. Dr. Nivens, this concludes our recognitions for this evening. We thank you for your time.
Well, you said just shake his hands.
Okay. So are we doing that? You want to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So trustees, we have one more recognition, and he is in the back. So Mr. Jamal, would you please ask Mr. Joe Cluss to come out front, please? So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is Mr. Klutz's last board meeting, and he's been the man behind the scenes to support us in Lamar CISD for a very long time. And so the trustees and I, we wanted to make sure Mr. Klutz knew that he was very well loved in Lamar CISD, very well respected. And thank you. Yes, sir. And a man that holds excellence as the highest standard. And so with him tonight is also his wife, Mrs. Klutz. You want to do a picture too?
Let's do a picture and stay out there.
Okay. One more.
All right, we're gonna go do another picture.
come around.
One more.
All right, the next item on the agenda is introductions. Dr. Nivens, are there any introductions?
No, Mr. President, there are none.
Mrs. Johnson, are there any public comments? Are there any board reports?
One of the things I guess I would like to say after attending all the graduations, and many of us did, is thank you to Dr. Nivens and all his administration and everybody that put forth some fantastically organized, delightful, and memorable graduation ceremonies. I think the parents were delighted, the kids were excited, and everything went out without a hitch, and I guess we all prayed real hard because it didn't rain. So we were very, very lucky. And, you know, I know there was a lot of volunteers that were working the parking lots, and I heard people come back and say, you know, done very well. So thank you again. I know it's not an easy task to put all of that together. The last day that teachers were in the schools, I did stop by several of the schools that were kind of having a changing of the principals. Some were retiring and moving on to other portions of their career. And with enough food and a lot of happiness, all the teachers and everyone took to the administration change successfully. And I was happy to be able to be there to see how well we've orchestrated that. And then I stopped by for a few minutes to the end of the year. I want to call it Adults Field Day, or I don't know what to call it. But y'all had such a good time. They put forth over the Transportation Center. They were playing kickball and throwing an axe and just having a great time. And it reminded me of the scene from Santa Claus 2, the movie, where he gives them all their childhood games and they're all sitting around playing. Y'all just look like little kids having a good time. And that, I hope that will be a tradition that we will continue, because everyone needed a day just to be themselves. And by putting them all in the same T-shirt, you don't know how many people in blue we have. They were all in blue shirts. That was transportation and maintenance and operation. We have an amazing group of people that are supporting our schools and everyone, and thank you again to all those people, and I'm glad they had a good time.
Any others?
I was just going to echo what she said about the graduation. The administration did a great job in all five of those ceremonies.
I would like to say, seeing all the schools do keep up the traditions from, I was out at Jane Long watching their end of year parade where all these students got to parade around the neighborhood, and they stopped at the senior center and performed there, and just to see families coming out and celebrating their kids was a great way to end the year. And just, it's good to see people, that things are the way it should be.
I'll add that we had another budget committee meeting, and we're going to hear a presentation on that later in this meeting. But the focus of the committee is still on student achievement, and also ensuring that our staff has the proper raises and they're fairly compensated. So that continues to be the focus of the administration in those meetings and of the school board. And the numbers are starting to come more into focus, but that's continually going to be what we're going to be looking to. All right, Dr. Nivens, is there a superintendent report?
Yes, sir. So really briefly, I appreciate the trustees' acknowledgement of graduation, but I was fortunate. All I had to do was show up and have dinner, and it was the team led by Dr. Osagi that did a good job, a great job, planning that entire thing and getting everybody in our district involved in the parking lot, bus transportation and shuttles with Mike Jones and his team. And, you name it, everyone pitched in. And so to the team, I really appreciate you guys for making the day. For those outgoing seniors, a great day. And it's truly a great day when you're able to see young people out in the world. And you just pray they're ready. You just pray they're ready, pray they make the right decisions. But we appreciate that. And then lastly is I was also, some of the staff and the trustees were able to meet my dad. And so my dad came to watch my son graduate. He graduated this year also from Lamar CISD. And as I've said publicly, he's the best man I know. And so my dad came, and it was good for him to be around. So it was a joy for me as superintendent and as a dad to take part in it. So.
All right, at this time, we'll take action on the consent agenda and current action items. We will pull items 9A, consider approval of memorandum of understanding with Kickstart Kids program. 9B, consider approval of contract for construction of Lamar CISD Police Station. And 9C, consider approval of salary increases. Are there any other items that the board would like to pull at this time? All right, hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the current consent agenda and action items with the exception of items 9A, 9B, and 9C? Trustee Danziger moves. Is there a second? Trustee Welch. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The motion carries. All right, Dr. Nivens will start with 9A. May I have you want to do the presentation first?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Nivens.
So trustees, I have our athletic director, the fantastic, fabulous, everything you want to say, Coach Nelson, to come and talk about Kickstart. But Coach Nelson, this floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Nivens. Good evening, trustees. This evening's presentation is a brief overview of the Memorandum of Understanding with Kickstart Kids about their Character Through Karate program, which is available to us in LCISD. Kickstart Kids is a physical education program recognized by TEA that teaches character through karate to students in grades 6 through 12. It is started in 1992 and currently exists in several Houston area school districts. Some of them are listed here. LCISD is proposing piloting Kickstart Kids in one middle school next year with the hopes of growing the program to additional middle schools and additional grade levels as we see success and continued interest in the program in our school district. Kickstart's impact, these are some statements from area school employees. You can see here Fort Bend ISD talks a little bit about the importance of middle school and connecting with kids at that grade level before they go on to both junior high and high school. And in Pflugerville, one of their school administrators talks about the connection that kids were able to make in the 6th grade through Kickstart Kids, those students that aren't necessarily athletes or cheerleaders or in the performing and visual arts, that they were also able to continue with as they continued in their secondary education. Oops. This short video probably tells it best, because this puts it into the words of the students who experience the program.
First day of karate, it was like the best day of my life.
It's taught me values that I can use not only here inside the karate room, but it can help me outside in the real world, like in school or at home.
I thought karate would just be about kicks and punches, but it has actually helped me become a better person.
I can get good morals for life, how to protect myself, and with my friends.
And they say really great things about it and what it did for them too. The way that we identified interest in LCISD is during course selection with our incoming 6th graders at each of our middle schools. They were given the option to express their interest in Kickstart Kids. And we went back and looked at the number of incoming 6th graders at each campus that expressed interest in registering for Kickstart Kids. We compared that both with the projected number of incoming 6th graders and then the percentage of that incoming 6th grade class. As you can see, the largest percentage of incoming 6th graders was at Polly Ryan Middle School for interest in the Kickstart program. So Lamar CISD is proposing that we pilot the Kickstart program at Polly Ryan Middle School for the 2022-2023 school year. The cost of the program is $110,000 annually, but Lamar CISD's portion of that would be $70,000 in funding, and Kickstart Kids secures the other $40,000 in funding. It's a 3-year commitment, which then would allow us to grow the program 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade with the option to extend it into the 2025 and 2026 school year. The Kickstart Kids program, for that amount of money, provides a full instructor, all equipment for what they call the dojo at the school, uniforms for participants, enrichment activities, and that's for up to 200 students on the campus. The students will complete a registration form and pay an annual fee of $50. There are waivers available for those students who show a financial need. The fee that the students pay helps offset the cost of the uniform over the course of the year and helps to pay for entry fees for the 4 tournaments that they travel to each year. Lamar CISD would provide a dedicated classroom, transportation on a school bus to those 4 tournaments, the use of the gym or auditorium for belt ceremonies, and then to support the program both in the community via the website at the school, etc. What questions do you have about the program I can try to help with?
Can you be sure to let us know if Chuck Norris comes down? Because I'd really like to meet him.
Yes, sir.
I'm serious about that, but that was kind of a joke. So I didn't really understand that it was full-time until the presentation. So is this a class in their normal schedule that the kids go to?
Yes,
every
sir.
day?
The course would take place of their physical education class. Instead of going to PE, they would go to Kickstart as their PE.
And so would the instructor be a Lamar employee, or would it be more like a contract?
It would be a contracted teacher through Kickstart. They would be a full-time teacher at the campus, provided by Kickstart Kids.
And our cost would be $70,000 this year and for the next 3 years. And then if we add it to other campuses, it's $70,000 per campus per year.
The way the MOU for this year reads, that is correct.
Will this MOU allow the administration to add it to other campuses without board approval, or is this only for Ryan Middle School?
This is only for Ryan Middle School, so everything additional we add will be trustee approval.
Thank you.
Is it at Ryan or Wright?
It's at Poly Ryan.
Okay, I thought, wasn't it, when we just talked about it being at Wright?
No, Poly Ryan has been the campus.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I have a comment. Actually, when I was a middle school principal many, many moons ago, we had a Kickstart program on my campus when I was a principal, so I have firsthand experience with the Kickstart program. And I was sent to a middle school that was considered chronically violent, and we had 1 year, the first year I got there, we had 1 year to turn it around, or we were gonna be shut down by the federal government. And so my counselor actually brought it to me and said, you know, this would be something good for our kids and our character. And so we instituted the Kickstart program, and it actually became the largest program in the state of Texas. And we went from severe discipline problems to a lot of students being able to have work with character and integrity, class work. It just really changed the whole culture and the climate of the campus. And so, and yes, Chuck Norris does come to the belt ceremonies. Every now and then he'll just pop up. His people don't even know when he'll show up, but he does show up. And so he came to ours, and he's a very nice gentleman. And so if he does show up, we'll know at the you know, when he does, and then we'll let the trustees know that Chuck Norris is in the house.
All right, is there a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with Kickstart Kids program? Trustee Welch moves. Is there a second? Trustee Hubenak. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands and say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
All right, next, trustees, we have consider approval of contract for construction of the Lamar CISD Police Station. I'll turn over to Mr. Greg Buchanan.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. Tonight, we want to bring forth discussion and possible approval of action on our police station. This project was designed and advertised in May of 2022. We had 7 contractors enter a competitive seal proposal on May the 26th. Our construction budget for that facility was $4,890,573. The top rate contractor, after negotiations, and we ranked them, and we were able to lower it another $870,000. We were only able to lower the construction cost to $8,436,363. Due to it being so far over budget, what we're recommending tonight for the Board of Trustees is to reject all the proposals for this and let us go back to the drawing board to be able to get this project across the finish line in budget. Are there any questions about the police station?
Thank you, sir.
Can you talk about why we think it's over budget, overpriced?
What we've looked at is the electrical package, both the lighting and the gear. It came back considerably higher than what we anticipated, along with some HVAC. Also, we're looking at some contractors that were very tight in their bidding proposals, but right now they're not hungry enough for work. So they were giving us some large numbers at this point in time. So we're going back to the drawing board to see what we can do and how we can reevaluate it to get it back within the proposed budget, but still achieve the goal for the district.
But we're still okay having where they're housed right now. But I know that this does put us back trying to complete this in a timely fashion, right?
That is correct. They're currently at Brazos Crossing. It was going to take us roughly a year to get this constructed and be able to get them to move in. This may delay it another 3 to 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion to reject the contract for construction of Lamar CISD Police Station? Trustee Lambert, is there a second? Trustee Hubenak, any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. And the motion carries.
Next, Mr. President, we have consider approval of salary increases. And so Ms. Jill Ludwig, our CFO, will come take the microphone.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Nevins. I'm here tonight to present our proposed raises for several of our employee groups. First of all, I'd like to talk about the teachers and other classifications of positions that are on the teacher salary schedule. Our raise for them, for this group, is a flat $1,950 per year. It's equivalent to an average of 3% for all current employees. Our new teacher salary at the beginning of their career, step 0, will be $61,000. And the employee groups addressed are teachers, counselors, librarians, nurses, and several other professionals. This is what our bachelor's degree salary schedule looks like. You'll see step 0 at $61,000. I'll give you just a second to take a look at that.
Ms. Ludwig, can I also say one thing about that right quick?
Sure.
And so I recently held the second meeting for my teacher of the year, teacher and paraprofessional of the year. And so we, in the fall, we did a rotation, and we went to every track, and we met with all the teachers and paraprofessionals of the year. And I just asked them simple questions and got feedback from them. And then the second go-around we just had last week, and so they came back and just got some feedback about what did they see, you know, the things that they discussed, and did they see some improvements, some changes from administration. But one thing I want to clear up was one of the teachers informed me, well, the group informed me that there's a rumor out there that, you know, new teachers coming in will make more than a veteran teacher. And that didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand. I said, if you look at the pay scale, if I'm a new teacher coming in, I make $61,000. If I'm a tenured teacher, I make $65,500. And so they just said that was a rumor that needs to be addressed. And so, you know, everyone gets a pay increase every single year. And so I just want to say publicly, we don't have any veteran teachers making lower than $61,000 per year in our school system, or after the board takes action. And so I just need to say that publicly because they said that's been a rumor ever since they've been here. And one teacher said she'd been here 18 years, and she's heard that every year. And so I just want to say that that's not the case. Is that if you look at the pay scale, that's what everyone we're proposing, where everyone's salary will be next year.
So real quick to his point, that 18-year teacher going into her 19th year, she would get a raise. He or she would get a raise from $68,750 to $69,250, and then this $1950 on top of that.
No, it's a flat $1950. This is a hiring schedule. We do not do a raise plus a step. Some districts do their compensation plan that way, but ours is a flat dollar amount. So it's $1950. This is just a hiring schedule.
So that you said hiring schedule, that means that this will be the salary structure. This will be the salary structure for all employees on that pay scale next school year.
Yes, for instance, if someone has 18 years of experience and they're hired by us, they would receive $68,750 as their first salary with Lamar CISD. Otherwise, continuing teachers receive $1,950.
I think once upon a time, we did do steps plus the pay raise.
We did.
And so you could kind of know where you fell, but it's been a while since you took the steps away. So I guess what they're probably thinking is if you're a first-year teacher 3 years ago and now you were getting the same increases every year, you'd be there if we were giving the same increases, correct?
There's
Maybe
probably a
not.
lot of different ways that
Yeah.
some might interpret because different districts pay in different ways, you know.
I'm just
and-
thinking for us, I can see where that information would be out there like that, because you'd think if they're starting higher than where I started, how am I moving up? But this, this kind of puts it on paper so we can see the increases.
I'll share that in our budget committee meetings, we've had discussions not only about making sure that our teachers are paid well, but also about it's a very competitive hiring environment for teachers, and that this would keep LCISD at or near the top of, compared with other districts in our area.
Because you don't want someone leaving here with maybe 10 years' experience going somewhere else and seeing a higher incoming salary than what they'd be getting here.
Right.
And then the master's degree is $1,000 higher than the master's is higher than the bachelor's schedule. But again, this is a hiring schedule. Our second category of raises are with the custodians in our district. What we're proposing is that we establish a separate pay schedule for custodial staff based on our current schedule. The starting salary would be $12.17 for pay grade 1. We would provide consistent increases for each of the pay grades above that, 2 and above. And then they will also receive whatever midpoint raise is awarded for the other employees on the midpoint schedule. And right now, what we're budgeting is a 3% of midpoint for all the other categories, but we're only bringing the custodians scale to the board right now because we want to establish a separate schedule for them.
What has the starting schedule been for custodial staff?
$11, I don't think I have that up. Our
1101.
And their contract is year-round, or?
It's 230 days for most. There are some that are 251 that are more supervisory level.
Okay.
But the general custodian is 230. Okay, the third and final category we wanted to discuss tonight is the Child Nutrition Fund. Those employees are paid from the Child Nutrition Fund, which is separate from the general fund. Of course, there are federal revenues, and there are also user fees or lunch sales that contribute to the revenue of that fund. These raises would also, or this proposal also establishes a separate pay schedule for the child nutrition employees. It's also based on the current year schedule. Here we're proposing that we include a $3 per hour increase for all pay grades. And we will also be doing some pay grade reclassifications. And then these employees will also receive whatever percentage of midpoint raise we award to the rest of the employees under the 22-23 compensation plan. Any additional questions?
Trustee Welch.
What about the tax rate? Are we,
I will have information about the tax rate in the next presentation. The tax rate is not part of the child nutrition discussion, but the general fund and the INS fund. This is of course, by law, we have to use the maximum or the minimum compressed rate. Sorry, I said that wrong. The maximum compressed rate for the state, as well as any tier 2 or enrichment pennies that we add to it. So that rate's going to be around 85.5 cents.
Compared to the current?
Yes, which is 87.2 cents.
Any other questions?
I do have one more. What about other folks in the district, bus drivers, maintenance department, paras, those kind of positions?
Right now, our proposed budget includes a 3% of midpoint raise for all.
3%?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve salary increases? Trustee Danziger moves. Is there a second? Trustee Brunzell seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, a call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. We'll now have reports and presentations on the information items.
All right, trustees, I have Mr. Buchanan up to talk about our bond update.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. Tonight, we'd like to have a discussion on some bond projects that we have. Just to update the board, we had 36 pay applications in the month of May totaling just over $7.5 million. Huggins has some addition and renovations going on. M. Scott is the general contractor for that job. They've already started the demo. That is the picture that you see there. They're scheduled to be complete in July of 2023. Austin Elementary has an addition and security vestibule going on there as well. Right now, Bass Construction is the contractor. The piers, that is what you see on the right-hand side, the art classroom that's being added, the piers that they're pouring in. And then the demolition has started this week, and they're expected to be completed in July of 2023. Jackson Elementary has the additions going on. You see the front new office area that they're putting in to add the security vestibules. That's the slab that's being poured. Right now, it's scheduled to be open in November of 2022. Bowie Elementary has that additional office space. You can tell that they've already poured the slab and they have the steel erected there. They're moving along at a pretty good pace. They're scheduled to complete in November of 2022. And then Beasley Elementary, general contractor, they started the demolition this week, and they will be scheduled to be completed in November of 2022. And then the Lamar Consolidated High School tennis courts, Sterling Structures as the general contractor. Right now, they've already started the demolition. Matter of fact, we hit a water line one evening. They had to stay till almost midnight to get it all fixed, but we were able to get the water back up for the next day. And it currently is projected to be completed in September of 2022. Are there any questions about our bond projects?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll have safety and security update from our Chief Dallas Warren. And I think he'll be joined by our Director of Safety and Security, Mr. David Pollard.
Thank you, Dr. Nivens. Trustees, tonight I'll give you a high-level overview of the safety and security practices that we have in place at Lamar CISD. First, I want to start off with active shooter training. All of our school resource officers complete the Alert Active Shooter Training. This is the program that is recommended by the Texas School Safety Center. And each summer, we reinforce that training, and they do scenario-based trainings to reinforce those skills that they've learned in that. We have reunification plans in place. We have 2 sites that we have trained for reunification in the event that that is ever needed. We have social media screening. Everybody knows that social media is a place that a lot of threats are usually advertised or made before there's any kind of actual event that occurs. We have a company that we contract with that screens social media. They screen between 15 and 20,000 posts related to Lamar CISD every week. Any identified threats, photos of threats, or any type of threatening image that has come in is forwarded to a team here at Lamar CISD. We review those threats to see if there's any type of action that we need to take to mitigate those threats. We have locked and controlled access exterior doors at all of our facilities. The standard is that all of our exterior doors should remain locked at all times. Anytime an exterior door has to be open for any period of time, the standard is that we will have a staff member assigned to that area to keep watch for any threats that may occur. We have a single point of entry for all visitors to our campus facilities. Signage directs those individuals to our single point of entry at the front of the building. When they come into that facility, they find themselves in a security vestibule. It's basically a locked box. That allows the front office staff to visually screen that individual and determine whether or not there's a threat, and then allow that door to be unlocked to bring them into the front office. Once they are in that front office, they undergo our visitor screening and registry process. During the visitor screening, we screen for 3 important areas. First, whether or not that individual is a registered sex offender. Secondly, whether or not there are any court orders or legal documents restricting their access to any of our facilities, students, or staff. And then we also screen them for any past threats that they've made to any of our students, staff, or facilities. Once they complete that training or complete that screening, they're given a visitor badge. They're then allowed into the remaining part of the facility. That badge identifies where they're supposed to be at. Once they enter the facility, they will see that all of our classroom doors are remaining locked during instructional periods. A few years ago, we upgraded all those classrooms with the classroom intruder locks. Those locks are specifically designed to prevent forced entry into our classrooms. We have video surveillance at all of our facilities. The current standard is that we will have a 360-degree video surveillance of all of our facilities. We will also have video surveillance of all of our entrances, all of our exits, and the common areas such as gymnasiums and cafeterias. We also have video surveillance of the main hallways in those areas. We have law enforcement personnel that are assigned throughout the district. Every secondary campus has law enforcement personnel assigned to it, and then every elementary campus has an SRO assigned to them. That means that an SRO may have 4 or 5 elementary campuses assigned to them, and they will rotate their time throughout the day to those various campuses. We have security personnel. They are assigned very similar to what our police officers are. We have security officers assigned to every secondary campus, and we have security officers assigned to 4 of our elementary and special sites. Drill requirements, we have extensive drill requirements. All of our campuses follow the standard response protocols. We have 5 different actions that those campuses take in event of any threat towards that campus. That is secure, lockdown, shelter, evacuation, and hold. We practice those procedures by conducting drills at each campus at least twice each month. That drill standard is almost twice what the state mandates. Parents should receive a message of those drills prior to any drill occurring, and we also notify all local law enforcement entities when we are conducting those drills. We have random canine inspections at all of our campuses. You all met Jumbo the other day, our newest member of the police department. Jumbo will be conducting random classroom locker and vehicle inspections to search for narcotics and weapons throughout the coming school year. And of course, we also have behavioral threat assessment teams. Those teams review threats that are made towards them when threats are made either towards themselves or to others to do harm, a report is made to a behavioral threat assessment team to follow up to mitigate those threats. And of course, if a weapon is involved in those threats, then it's up to the police department to respond to that as well and determine what that threat level is and whether or not it's a credible threat. And with that, I will answer any questions that you might have.
I do. Of course, my question is about Jumbo. How is he, does he work every day? Is he
Yes, ma'am, we're still learning his capacity. But yes, as a matter of fact, Jumbo I'll also point out that Jumbo just graduated last Friday. And I'd like to congratulate his handler, Officer Edge, finished top in his class. Nice. So they both did very well in the training. And, but to answer your question, yes, he will be working with that officer every single day throughout our campuses.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a question or two, but I think it's more appropriate for a closed session. But I do want to say I really appreciate the job you guys do, and especially right now, there's a lot of attention on school security. And anytime you need anything as far as personnel or equipment, tell Dr. Nivens, and you got a yes vote out of me automatically. I mean, that's as important to me. I've said it many times. Security is important to me in Lamar as academics, and I will always vote whatever you guys need. You guys are the professionals, and I've had people email me asking me questions, and I keep telling them whatever chief and our superintendent say we need, let's do it. So, thank you.
Chief, I know this was a very high-level description of what we have, and I know a lot of parents want to know more about the details on their child's campus, and I've got kids in the district, and I would want to know all those details too. Why can't you share more specific details with the community?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and what we do is we do not want to reveal any of our strategies, any of our plans that could undermine our ability to respond effectively to any type of threat. If we put those plans and procedures and made them public, people would be able to then study those, look for vulnerabilities, and really undermine the safety and security plan that we have in place for our children.
And Chief, if we often hear about safety and security, see something, say something. So if a community member or a parent or a student sees a threat or sees a vulnerability in one of our campuses, who should they contact?
You know, my email and the police department's email, our phone numbers are readily available on our district webpage. They can easily contact us through there. They can report it if they want to do it anonymously. They can report any type of threat through the Crime Stoppers program. But the easiest way to do it, and the quickest way, is to contact the police department directly. We immediately send somebody out to investigate those threats or that vulnerability and then take action to correct it.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that I appreciate the fact that we take all the online posts and that we are screening everything regarding Lamar CISD. So thank you for putting that into place and making sure that that is done with diligence. Because again, like some of the other, like John already said, that safety is, you know, our top priority for our babies. Want to make sure that they all go home better than they came to us. And so that the online world is a scary place too. So. Yeah.
It is, and I was, when we first started that, I was really surprised at how many posts they actually screen. Like I said, current numbers run almost 20,000 posts a week that they're screening for us.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, trustees, next we'll have a budget workshop update from our CFO, Ms. Jill Ludwig.
Good evening again. This presentation will cover items 10D as well as items 11A through C. Those were future action items. First of all, the budget update. As you recall, the Board of Trustees is required to adopt 3 budgets: the general fund budget, the child nutrition budget, and the debt service fund budget. Starting with the general fund, you see the components are, of course, revenues and expenditures, with property taxes and state aid being the 2 greatest sources of revenue, and personnel and benefits being the greatest source of expenditures, with everything else making up a small component. Where we've been this year, as Mr. Hunt mentioned earlier, we've done a lot of things, a lot of revenue estimation, a lot of budget cutting, and various activities to get to the point we are now. We've presented allocations to campuses and departments. They did their data entry. We made some adjustments. We've had a couple of workshops with the board budget committee, and also we've had some strategic planning meetings with our internal teams. Back in April, we were looking at a $23 million proposed deficit in the 22-23 budget. Then after a few cuts in May, we were at about $20 million deficit, and now we've actually gotten to the positive of about $500,000. So we're looking good. In the budget committee meeting, we talked about enrollment projections, attendance, and of course our values, and then also our first priority, which is raises for all staff, which we discussed earlier, and then also providing hiring incentives for new teachers to the district. The reductions that I mentioned earlier within the last month we've made accumulate to about $20.5 million. We've made some staffing ratio recommended changes, with the bulk of which going to the secondary level. We've also kept our non-campus budgets at the same level as the current year, 21-22 budget. We've also increased our estimate for attrition, which is actually a reduction of the salary budget. And then we've delayed, at this point in time, some staffing proposals by the CTE and CCMR groups. That was about $500,000. Of the $3.8 million you see there, in the non-campus budgets, we did hold steady some of the non-campus budgets in the areas of maintenance and operations, because that involves the upkeep of our buildings. Also property insurance, the central appraisal district fees, and also legal fees, and then transportation costs, which is the bulk of that is for the fuel for the buses. Focusing on the general fund, there are 3 major categories of revenue in the general fund, from sources, local sources, state sources, and federal sources. And you'll see that less than 1% of our revenues come from federal. Here is a pie chart of our revenues, and you'll see 214 million, or 54% of our budget comes from property taxes, and then 155.5 million comes from state aid. So that's about 93% of our budget from those 2 pieces. Here is the detail of those amounts. You'll see that other than property taxes and state aid, TRS on behalf, which is a book entry where we reflect our portion of the TRS benefits paid to our employees' accounts with TRS. That was $20 million, and also $3 million for our Medicaid revenues. I wanted to point out that our total revenue budget is right at $397 million. Property tax revenues of course, are generated by our property values in the district. Right now, it looks like there will be at least 24% higher than the 2021 values, which the 24% is humongous compared to the previous 5 years, which averaged at about 6.5% growth. We're using 95% of total values on the recommendation of the chief appraiser. And chief appraiser's values have to fall within a prescribed range in order to meet state guidelines. The largest category of revenues in the state category come from the foundation school program and also per capita allotments. In our board budget committee meetings, we discussed various ways that we could estimate state aid, and the two biggest drivers of state aid are enrollment and attendance. And so you'll see in the middle column, it reflects the moderate scenario of both attendance and enrollment. We're looking at about a 2,300 student increase in enrollment for next year, and we're using 94.5% as our attendance rate. So that'll generate the $155.5 million. In federal, the bulk of the revenues come from indirect costs, ROTC reimbursements, and also SHARS and MAC, which are Medicaid programs. Moving on to the expenditure side of the budget, we're right at $397 million, again, with $333.5 million being salaries or personnel and benefits. That's about 84% of the budget. And then the next largest category would be your professional and contracted services, which also includes utilities and costs like that. That's about 9%. So again, 93% of the budget on the expenditure side relates to those two areas. And so here's a pie chart of same. Moving on to the debt service fund, we're showing total estimated revenues of $101.5 million, with the bulk being $96 million in property taxes. And also we've got about $100 million or so in expenses in this fund, with about $30 million going to bond principal and about $71 million going to interest on our bonds. Our key points of interest in this area are keeping a level or consistent debt service tax rate, and also keeping increased debt capacity, meaning the ability to issue additional bonds. And also this budget will extend the life of our accrued interest, because with the additional tax revenues, we're not having to use some of our capitalized interests that are in the fund balance. Moving on to child nutrition, that is our self-sustaining budget. The estimated revenue is about $20.5 million for next year. And as I mentioned earlier, it comes from breakfast and lunch sales and also federal reimbursements. This is how the expenditures stack up there, about $9.5 million to payroll and benefit costs, $12 million for all the supplies, the food costs, and various things like that. We're expecting to end the year with about an $8 million fund balance in the child nutrition fund, and that exceeds some of the state levels that are that they allow for us, and so we're needing to draw down that fund balance. So in addition to making some strategic expenditure decisions, we're also providing raises and restructuring salaries a little in that fund. We think that'll draw down the fund balance slightly over the next few years, and by a couple to 3 years out or so, enrollment and sales will again level off that fund. With respect to the tax rate, the current year tax rate for 2021 was 1.242 or $1.24. The M&O rate was a little over 87 cents, and interest and sinking for debt service is 37 cents. What we're proposing for 22-23 is a flat tax rate, same $1.242, and the M&O rate will be about 85.5 cents. That's 0.8046 is the maximum compressed rate that's required by TEA. We'll actually get our MCR assigned to us in August sometime by TEA, and that'll confirm that rate. But then there's the additional 5 cents we add locally for Tier 2 enrichment. And then our interest in sinking rate would go up to 0.3874. So about 1 3/4 cents higher, but we would be able to keep a flat rate. That will help us to increase our debt capacity. With respect to the future action items, 11A through C, there are a number of truth and taxation requirements that we have to meet, which requires publishing several things and including various things in our budget. We do a couple of tax rate calculations, which is the first one being the voter approval rate, which was formerly known as the rollback rate, a no new revenue tax rate, and then the board is required to call a special meeting to vote on the proposed tax rate as well as the date for the meeting that you'll discuss the budget and the tax rate. So that's a couple of the items. This is just a snapshot of the notice that we have to publish. There's a lot of calculations and things that we have to tell the public, which follows these things, but I wanted to point out the tax rate and the date that you're needing to approve. Also, with respect to transparency, House Bill 2723 requires that we publish tax rate information on our website and also have public hearings. And then also Tax Code 26.04 requires us to add an appendix to our tax rate that actually presents those calculations of the rates that I mentioned earlier. And then finally, this year we have to designate an individual by name that calculates the no new revenue rate and the voter approval tax rate. Any questions on any of that?
So just for clarity, we're lowering the M&O rate, but we're raising the bond rate. So
Yes.
the flat rate is the same.
Yes.
And that is to help us pay, Dr. Nivens told me this, that has helped to pay off the debt a little bit faster
Yes.
without raising the overall rate that the taxpayers are paying.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One more, so we didn't talk about our fast growth allotment.
Yes.
So can you briefly talk about that, just so everyone in the room can understand what that means and what that did to our funding also?
Sure. If you'll recall, toward the beginning of the presentation, I talked about the various scenarios that we've gone through in order to balance the budget. At one point in time, well, let me just put it this way. I've already done 26 calculations of our state funding this year. But in between some of those calculations, we were notified that the state is going to prorate the fast growth allotment. So every district that's eligible for the fast growth allotment is being prorated by 17%. So our typical fast growth allotment calculation for this year would have been 25 million, roughly. And now we're going to receive about 20 million. So 17% for us is right at $4.5 to $5 million or so that we're not going to receive. So that contributed to us having that deficit.
The reason for that was the too many fast growth districts?
Yeah, the state has a certain amount that they can allocate across the whole district. And when the actual calculations for all the districts exceed that amount, then they have to bring everybody back down so that their cap can cover everybody. So it was 17% this year.
We get punished for being.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ludwig. And we have one more future action item.
Yes, I have Dr. Jones coming up to talk about some policy additions and revisions. First, Dr. Jones will talk about our library policy revisions, and then next we will have Mr. Bates that will discuss another policy revision dealing with our school mascots.
All right, Mr. President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Nivens, tonight I have the pleasure of discussing policy options related to EF Local, which pertains to instructional materials and library books. As a reminder, earlier this school year, Lamar CISD created a library book selection committee that included teachers, campus administrators, district administrators, parents, students, and librarians. The purpose of this committee was to define a process and procedures for selecting new books for LCISD libraries. To do this, we met 4 times and reviewed a variety of resources: legal and local school board policies, Texas Association of School Board information items, sample procedure documents from other districts, and other resources from organizations like the American Library Association. The committee developed a procedure that reached consensus as best practice for Lamar CISD and was shared with the Board of Trustees in March 2022. Since then, a few things have happened. On April 11th, the Texas Education Agency shared a recommended EFB policy with school districts. Shortly after, on May 16th, the Texas Association of School Boards shared a recommended EF, EFA, and EFB policy. With those guidance documents, the Library Book Selection Committee reconvened to review the key similarities and differences of those policy recommendations and provided feedback regarding their perceptions of what is best for Lamar CISD. Each of you received a binder, should have one of these, either at the policy meeting or tonight, and it's full of great information for you related to each of these policies. It includes original versions of the policy draft documents, notes from our committee, annotated versions of the policy documents, and a combination document that includes committee preferences. Lots and lots of notes and things inside of this binder for you. Currently, LCISD has a single policy for selection and review of instructional materials, EF Local. Moving forward, we have the option to continue with the single EF policy that covers instructional resources and library books, or we can move forward with 2 separate policies, EFA, that covers instructional materials in the classroom, and EFB that covers library materials. We have included a recommended EFA and EFB policy that encompasses the feedback received from the Library Book Selection Committee to help provide some clarity of all the options at this time. I've also identified some key elements found in each of the policy proposal documents that I'll share with you just real briefly. So in the TEA EFB policy, some key elements, they included avoiding inappropriate materials and reference Penal Code 43.24A2, 43.24B, and SIPA. They provide 6 book selection criterion and then provide an additional 5 selection criterion for fiction, narrative nonfiction, and graphic novels. They require all library materials be read prior to purchase. All new library titles must be approved by the library coordinator and this Board of Trustees. Challenge materials go to a district committee, and that committee must include 2 parents, and challenge materials must be reviewed within 10 days of receiving the challenge. There is also included in that policy a 10-day preview of new titles for parents prior to student availability that would take place once in the fall and in the spring, as that policy reads right now. It also includes a biannual inventory, so a full inventory of the library twice a year. And then the Board of Trustees would also approve the subscription to TextQuest. TextQuest is a collection of library databases curated by the Texas State Libraries and Archives Commission. We have been a part of that subscription for many, many years. The TASB EFB policy, the key elements found there is that the district shall establish processes for parents to review library materials. It also includes avoiding inappropriate materials. It references Penal Code 43.24A2, 43.24A1, and SIPA. It provides 15 book selection criterion, and students age 18 and above may challenge library materials in addition to parents and community members. Challenge materials go to a district committee which may include parents. Challenge materials must be reviewed in a reasonable timeline, and the superintendent establishes a system for regular maintenance of library materials. The combination document that we've put together that includes elements from the TASB and the TEA policies, it has that the district shall establish processes for parents to review library materials. It also includes an avoiding inappropriate materials section, which references Penal Code 43.24A2, 43.24B, and SIPA. It provides 15 book selection criterion, which is a combination of the TEA and the TASB policies. It does have students age 18 plus may challenge library materials, including in addition to the community and parents. Challenge materials go to a district committee and may include parents, and challenge materials must be reviewed in a reasonable timeline, and the superintendent shall establish a system for regular maintenance of library materials. We do have documents that we'll make sure we share with you all that we didn't have in the binders today that outline all of these items and a few little smaller key elements from each of those policies as well. Are there any questions?
Trustee Walsh, you're the chair of the policy committee, so if you'd like to share a little bit about the process and your comments on the policies.
And then Zach and Kay can jump into it as well. We had a policy committee meeting on May the 31st where we dug into this pretty deep. And I had talked to the head of the TASB policy department on the telephone, and I wanted to understand what the difference was from the TEA's recommendation and the TASB recommendation that had just come out a day before. And it took me a little bit of time to get that person on the phone, but we did. I would really, we're not going to adopt this tonight. We're talking about in July. Is that correct, Dr. Niven? So I would really recommend all 7 of us to read the TEA policy in and of itself, and then the TASB recommendations, and then what the administration is proposing. The TEA has a lot more teeth to it. One of the things that I'm going to try to get into the proposal, and I hope you guys will support me on this, it's in the TEA recommendation, is that the administration give the board a list of books they want to adopt 30 days before they are in the libraries. And the administration has taken that out, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Dr. Jones? Or the committee? Maybe.
Yes, sir. The committee recommendations did not include board approval as a requirement for purchasing library books.
And so what we talked about in the policy committee was a lot of our materials stay in the library for up to 18 to 20 years. So we're talking about a 30-day delay, potentially, for a book that's going to stay in there for up to 2 decades. So what I said that I would like to do with that list, because there's so many books, I would like to take that list and put it out for the public consumption. Let the public come and read these books, or at least read the titles. And you put it out on the internet, and you've got a lot more eyes focusing on this stuff. And then, because there's no way that anybody in this administration or any of us can read all these books in that amount of time. But it would still allow those titles to be viewed publicly. And there was concern about the 30-day delay, if I'm not mistaken. But personally, I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, we have a problem with the current system. We're taking some other steps to fix those problems, but I think this is another set of eyes. And it would also give the 7 of us the final stamp of approval before they go into our libraries. Kay, Zach, I don't know if you guys have anything to add from the meeting. There is video of that meeting if you guys are interested in. Dr. Nivens can give you that link.
I saw the video is posted public to the district's YouTube page and all that, so that is there. I would like to say that the committee and the administration did definitely do their diligence on making sure that, everything was addressed and talked about. So I want to give a thank you to those community members that showed up and spoke out, and there were you are a valued part of this committee, this process, and all that. So, yeah. So, like John said to the rest of us, in that binder, it's chock full of information that you just have to sit down and digest and figure out, okay, what is best. So I will echo what he said for us, just to actually get in there and invest in time to reading and all that. So.
Well, and I appreciated all the hard work that Dr. Jones and his committee and the librarians, they are in a task of trying to keep up not only with the books that are in their library and then find the new books. And I think you stated that the meeting that there's just 8 books. I know that's 8 books too many, but you have 8 books under review right now. So do you, when those 8 books have been reviewed and whatever the consequences are, will that information be brought back to the board?
I'm sure, yes, ma'am, I'm sure. It all goes to the superintendent, all the information, and I'm confident he'll share that information out.
And I think I just reiterated in the meeting that I don't have a problem with bringing the titles to us, but as far as trying to find which books to adopt or not, I'm going to take it to the experts, and that's you and your committees and your librarians. And I feel like I trust the people in the room, but it doesn't hurt having more eyes ears, but I would hate to decide on a book because a couple people said they didn't like it. You know, even when we read grants, we let 3 to 5 people read a grant because everybody sees things in a different way. So we just have to be careful in that respect.
And one thing
Thank
I would
you.
like to say, in like what she mentioned with those 8 books, one thing I would like the public to know is whenever those 8 books were brought to the attention, they were immediately pulled from the library. So there was no like, hey, we're gonna let it sit there while we take time to invest it. No, we took action as a district right away on those things. So I'd like to just again publicly say that we are taking this seriously and that we are doing our diligence, and the team itself. And I know Kay mentioned the librarians, and I know our librarians are amazing and they invest a lot of time and effort into that. So again, just want to say thank you to them as well.
And the other thing that I want to reiterate here is, and I can get in trouble for this because I want to be heard clearly. Kay likes to say on this issue, she wants to trust the experts. I respect our librarians and the education that they have. With them on duty, we have this problem. And it might be because of the volume of material. So this is not about them as individuals and trusting them or not trusting them is the way I see it. I see this as there's just so much information coming in. And one of the criteria, and we talked about this in March, is it an award-winning book? Well, I mean, anybody can give out an award these days. And the stuff that was read in this boardroom and other boardrooms across the region with the vulgar material, a lot of those books were award-winning. So I think that we need to step back and we need to remember, first and foremost, we're talking about libraries for minors. These are not public libraries. This is not a First Amendment right to publish and sell. This is the kind of material that we want. We are the ones upholding the standards in Lamar CISD. And what are our standards going to be for minors? Is it going to be material that inspires and causes critical thinking and those kinds of things? Or are we going to allow 2 or 3 pages out of 300 that are very vulgar? Because, well, that's the way kids talk anyway. Or is there, you know, a slant in a book that would kind of disparage a certain group because of ethnicity or religion? None of us would want that. But what if there's just 2 or 3 pages, quote unquote? I think that that's a reason to dismiss the book. With all the other great material in the world, with all the other great literature in the world, in my estimation, that's a book that should not be in Lamar libraries. So I would challenge you guys to think like that a little bit when you read these different policies over the next 6 weeks and we come back in July and adopt one of these.
I have a question, Dr. Jones. Do you know offhand approximately how many books we have in the libraries?
I think the number I shared at the policy meeting was over 500,000 books that we have in LCISD, unique titles in Lamar Consolidated ISD.
So Mr. Welch's suggestion that at the next meeting, you wanted to put it out 30 days early. Do we buy books at just one point or a couple points here, or do we do it on a rolling basis? And if so, what would that process, if we do on a rolling basis, what would that process look like for putting it onto a website so the public could view it?
Yes, sir. So right now, purchasing of library books does happen throughout the year. There are not set times. The librarians, they would be following our selection procedure and working with their principal to ensure that before the principal approves that purchase, that they've followed all of those and said that they've met all of those guidelines. But it happens throughout the entire school year. It's not set timelines per se.
Would that pose a problem then if we're doing it on a rolling basis to have a website where we could put it there for 30 days? Or could some books go on there and then they just automatically roll off after 30 days? Just logistically, could we make that work?
Logistically, we would have to define what that system is going to look like, of how we pull the book lists and how would we publish that, and pulling all of that material. I don't know what that would look like. We would have to figure out what that process is and being able to put in there dates of this is whenever it was published so that it can go on. Written in the policy, it does say it's for a first-time purchase of a book. So we would also have to keep documentation of this is a book that has already been purchased in the past, so it doesn't roll back into that list. But last school year, we did purchase over 20,000 unique titles. So it's still a large sum of books.
So, Mr. Welch, the TEA policy or what you're suggesting, would you just want title and author? Would you want publisher? Would you want date? What information would you want on there?
I don't believe the TEA recommendation, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Jones, required or suggested the publisher and all that kind of stuff. I think it just recommended the title and the author. And it would just be a list on a sheet of paper or a PDF. And that would put some more eyes on it. And like I said, we were talking about the kind of material, because I had the question of how come there's so many books that we need to get rid of and add another 20,000 every year? And he gave a great example of electric scooter, of a book that describes an electric scooter that we want in our libraries. Well, that's a great addition, and maybe we're going to take out, how to make a wooden scooter. I don't know.
Exactly.
Something like
Kids
that.
are not into wooden scooters.
Right,
anymore.
but I
That's
don't
true.
see I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to even add that kind of stuff to the list. I mean, we have a problem with the way things have gone. And especially when you get to some of these novels or some of these nonfiction with a certain angle. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't just put some more eyes on out there. So the list would be what the professionals want and the administration. And then we would take it and we could sit on it and do nothing, or we could put it on the internet and invite our public, the folks who put us in these seats, to say, hey, does anybody have any interest in these? Does anybody know anything that's not good about one of these titles? And people would probably go out and research it themselves and come back and then.
If we did that, I do think we would need to make sure that we create a procedure for them to identify what is in our selection procedures guidelines that say this is a title that should not be brought into the LCISD collection, just to ensure that we're being careful to not, we don't want to be, we want to be careful whenever we're working with that to make sure that we're not purposely keeping books of a certain topic off of our shelves just because we don't like that. It's because of these guidelines that we don't want the book in our libraries. And so we want to make sure we have a very specific procedure for, here are my concerns with that book as to why it doesn't align with our procedures.
I think one of the main things that we can talk about, or just mention again, is that it does reference that penal code, and that it is something that is, whether it's pornographic or whatnot, that's the kind of stuff that we want to make sure that our minor students do not have access to, or don't, that we're not readily saying, okay, here, we're trying to teach you this, or want you to act this out, or put any of those thoughts into any of our students' minds under our care and supervision. So it's that, it's referencing that penal code regarding the pornographic material.
I was gonna, actually, your questions, President Hunt, a lot of those were the same ones I had. And so to your point, I think that's good, Mr. Jones, that if we're going to offer the 30 days, then yes, that we show them, please make sure, have a way that they can vet, if it doesn't meet this criteria, please know that it's not gonna be considered even for review. And so I think that's very helpful, and that will just make it a more efficient process. But I do think it's important because we're the ones that they come to as a board when it doesn't go well. And so I think as us being the ones that have to listen to it, and frankly, I was embarrassed by some of the stuff we had. So, but I'm accountable at the end of the day. And so I think it is, if we can make that work to have something to where we can be proactive instead of reactive in this situation, I think that's a very proactive approach. And so, and those of us that will hear about it the most are able to kind of get ahead of it as well. So that's my 2 cents.
So I'd just like to say that thank you, Dr. Jones, your committee for the work. As everyone has been paying attention to this topic now for quite a while, as we see the TV interviews and we hear everything, it's an adversarial conversation. And as a team of 8 at Lamar CISD, this is not an adversarial conversation. It's very clear we do not want pornographic material in our books, in our schools, for our children to read. Because I remember sending out a letter at the very beginning when we pulled those first 8 books and said, we will fight for the innocence of our kids. And so, unfortunately, there are people out there that would like us to have that material in our libraries, but we do not. And so I just want to say publicly, this is not an adversarial conversation in our school system. We are fighting the same fight. What we have to decide now is how do we fight that fight? And what's our process for fighting that fight? Because once we start circumventing our processes and procedures, then we have chaos, right? And and no one can work well in that environment. And so I just want to say that publicly because as you continue to hear the conversation, it becomes very aggressive and it becomes very angry. And as adults, our students are watching us, and when we approach each other and we have conversations in that tone and tenor, then it shows our young people how they should respond when they get our age, on how they should behave when they disagree. And so what I do appreciate about Lamar CISD and our community and our trustees is that it hasn't been that level of a conversation. It's been a very civil conversation that we've been able to have to come to an agreement because we're all fighting the same fight. And so I just want to make sure I say that because people on the outside will think that there's some internal turmoil, and there's no internal turmoil here. We all are on the same page. We don't want our students reading that. We don't want them exposed to that. We just have to figure out how we're going to fight this fight the best way that we can all agree on.
Yeah, I agree, and it's important to make this a non-personal discussion. This is about ideas. This is about standards. This is not about me or anybody else on this committee or any librarian. This is about the standards that we're upholding and the ideas.
And so that's a future action item. We'll bring it back in July. And so next we'll have Mr. Bates talk about CW local update. This one is a fairly short conversation.
Message received. Thank you, Dr. Nivens. Good evening, Board of Trustees. This next portion of the presentation is for a proposed policy update for CW local, which is a current policy that we have. And currently, the CW local policy governs the board's ability to have final authority on the naming of schools, and what we're wanting to propose as an addition to this policy is the naming of mascots also, the final authority resting with the Board of Trustees. And that's to better ensure that we're assuring the community that the names that we have for our mascots are appropriate for and meet the expectation of the Board of Trustees and the community as well. So the proposed recommendation would be the following, as I'll read. The superintendent shall determine the process to seek appropriate stakeholders' input when choosing a mascot for a district campus. And the final piece is, in consultation with administration, the board shall have final approval in selecting new elementary, middle school, and high school mascots as far as the final process for approving mascots. So I'll pause for any questions or any additional discussion.
And this was also discussed in the policy committee, so Mr. Welch, Ms. Danziger, or Mr. Lambert, if you have any comments on the process.
This came about because of the new Phelan Elementary opening, and they're going to be called the Knights, as in Knight in Shining Armor.
Yes, sir.
And from what I understand, that was not going to come through one of our board books for approval. And in the past, in my 3 years on the board so far, it always has. And so evidently that has been overlooked in the official policy. And so my desire was to simply add it to the policy so that we are the final ones that say, yes, however that process came about, this makes sense. This name, this logo, this animal or whatever is appropriate for us. And we're the final ones that say that. So it was that simple. I do want to say that because we have middle school and junior high, we might need to add the wording junior high to that as well.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other items on the future consent agenda that trustees would like to pull for discussion at the July board meeting? All right, hearing none, it is 6:59. We're adjourning the closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney.